Hi, my name is Jonathan David Shepard, and this is the second poem that I'll be discussing from my chapbook called Omneurus. It is called The Ballad of My Earthen Father. And I'd like to start off by reading it. I have touched the heart of madness. I have crawled through the mud, only to be with you. Conquered women, learned of chess, alcohol till all undress, only to be with you. I have studied countless prose, mastered romance's red rose, opened wide the Posian door, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. You touched my mind when you touched my ass. These spirits in their demon glass. You climbed the stairs, your eyes of light. I know, this isn't right. You were a software engineer. The rudder jammed, no hope to steer. All toward the end, grown rather queer. Now I must be your son. I've run, but here I stop to feel my blood a frenzied rush to heal. These wounds, this grief, this moment steal you from the kingdom come. My fate repeat these thoughts to live, and pray God takes the soul we give. The title, The Ballad, a modern ballad, is kind of like a pop song. There's a lot of references to the song I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For by U2, and specifically the cover that the band Disturbed did of that song. I draw from the meter and rhyme scheme of that song. So I call it a ballad, the ballad of my earthen father. So earthen, my dad has actually passed away, so buried, earthen. And earthen also in the sense of worldly, not my heavenly father, as I mentioned in a previous video that I'm a believer. So earthen as in worldly father, my human father. The story of my dad and me is basically he was relatively strict on some points. He was sad and angry and not a very happy guy, and he definitely took that out on me. At one point I decided to move out, get away from it all. I guess run away, establish a place on my own that was not subject to that kind of negative emotional energy. There was a lot of back and forth. I ended up completely broken down in alcoholism and my mental health issues, and I had to return. I was convinced that it was okay, but things really hadn't changed. And I went back, and it was very shameful that I did that. So there's a lot of pain and a lot of back and forth. So ultimately, what happened was my dad had a heart attack at the age of 50. He lived his life just flying into rages every couple of weeks. He would just fly into these rages. And he put himself under so much stress all the time that the stress of life and what was going on in his circumstances, he was in the passenger seat, and his heart just stopped. It just gave up. And he spent a week comatose in the hospital. And during that time, I was able to be with him and play him some of my favorite songs. One of them was I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. I played the Disturbed version. I had showed him that song before, and when I spoke the lyrics to him, he got teary-eyed at the lines, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. I think he really identified with that point of being a believer and yet still feeling lost. So I played that song for him on his deathbed, and so that song has a lot of meaning to me, and that's why so much of it is in the poem. The first stanza I don't have any notes on. The second stanza, alcohol till all undress, the promiscuity and disillusionment that come with alcoholism. That's what I mean by alcohol till all undress. The actual YouTube song goes, I have climbed highest mountains. I have run through the fields. I take a darker turn with it and say I have touched the heart of madness. I have crawled through the mud, only to be with you. And I think in the U2 song, the singer is referring to God. I'm referring to God and my dad at the same time. So stanza 3, mastered romance's red rose. Robert Burns wrote one of the most famous poems of all time, A Red, Red Rose. The next line, open wide the Poesian door. Poesy is another word for poetry, also a reference to Edgar Allan Poe. Darkness and poetry kind of married together, and Edgar Allan Poe wrote The Raven, and there's a moment there where he opens the door and there's nothing there, and it's supposed to be a very chilling moment, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. So I'm exploring the bizarre feelings that can exist between a father and a son pretty unapologetically, because I've definitely touched on some dark stuff, and there are feelings and events that I have, and I'm just trying to express it and make sense of it all in poetry. So I hope that line, you touched my mind when you touched my ass, is a reference to spanking and discipline and just how deeply personal the relationship between a father and a son can be, and how deep the wounds can go. These spirits in their demon glass, I follow that immediately with, it brings you to a very dark place, and that's, I'm sure, got some relationship to some people who suffer with alcoholism. That's how it starts, is they're trying to quiet their demons with drink. You climb the stairs, your eyes ablight. There was a dream that I had after my dad passed away, and it was a demonic dream, and I'm unsure if I was being visited by an apparition of my dad. But it was very dark and very strange. I threw a towel at the wall, and it suspended in the corner and just froze there, and it was just hovering motionlessly just there. And I didn't think anything of it at the time, but I realized that was pretty demonic. I had that dream, and in the dream my dad climbed up the stairs. He was wearing a towel like he was going to take a shower. He climbed the stairs, your eyes ablight, is also a reference to kind of a blind clamoring for power and success. You climb the stairs, your eyes ablight. Yeah, so those lines are a reference to that dream. I know this isn't right. Is an admission that is almost blasphemous how close I'm getting to something with this poem. I don't even know. The poem itself serves as an expression of what I mean by that, but stanza 5, you were a software engineer. The rudder jammed, no hope to steer. So he actually was a software engineer, but I use that as an example of someone who has to think very critically, and who then in turn takes that into his personal life and has a moral strictness and kind of absolutism. The rudder jammed, as in no hope to steer, like he can't go this way or that way morally. He has to, everything has to be perfect and absolute. Now I must be your son, I've run. So that rhyme, son and run, are really close together, so it kind of nails you down, so it really grabs your attention. But here I've stopped to feel. So I've stopped, and now I'm feeling. My blood, a frenzied rush to heal, is just an expression of what grief feels like in my experience. Stanza 7, the oneness of a father and a son, even in affliction, and it draws from a poem by a poet named Jones Very, who was a debatably insane man. Some people thought he was kicked out of, I want to say, Harvard as a professor because of some claims that he made. This Jones Very guy is who I'm talking about. Yeah, so I read his poems in that Norton Anthology of Poetry, and I took the last 2 lines from his poem The Dead, and I kind of repurposed them as a conclusion of the Ballad of My Earthen Father, this poem. Wow. That was kind of difficult to get through, but thanks for hanging out. That is my second poem from Omneurus, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.